The cowboy finally spoke. "I've loved you since childhood." When she came back to the valley of Willow Creek was calm and wide, just like it had always been. The golden fields moved gently with the wind, and the sky stretched far without any end. Small wooden houses stood quietly, and the old ranch still looked strong, even after many years. One afternoon, a carriage stopped at the edge of the dusty road. Clara Hayes stepped down slowly. She looked around, taking a deep breath. The air felt fresh and familiar. It carried the smell of dry grass, horses, and sunlight. It had been 10 years since she left this place, but now she was finally back. Clara had changed. She was no longer the young girl who used to run through the fields without a care. She had lived in the city, learned many things, and seen a different kind of life. But standing here again, she felt like a part of her had never left. Her eyes moved across the valley. Every corner held a memory. The old tree near the hill, the fence she once painted with her father, the creek where she used to sit for hours. And then her eyes stopped. Near the barn, someone stood quietly. A tall man wearing a cowboy hat, leaning slightly against the wooden fence. Ethan Cole. He had not changed much, yet everything about him felt different. He looked stronger now. His shoulders were broader, and his face carried a calm seriousness. But his eyes, they were still the same, quiet, deep, and full of thoughts he never spoke out loud. Clara's heart beat a little faster. Ethan had been a big part of her childhood. He worked on her family's ranch and was always nearby. While other boys were loud and playful, Ethan was silent and steady. He rarely spoke, but he always listened. He always noticed. As children, they spent many days together. Clara would talk about her dreams, her ideas, and her plans to see the world. Ethan would simply sit beside her, sometimes smiling, sometimes just watching the sky. He never interrupted her, but somehow he always understood her. Now, after all these years, they were standing in the same place again. Ethan looked at her from a distance. For a moment, neither of them moved. The wind passed between them, soft and slow. Clara wanted to walk toward him, to say something, anything, but her feet stayed still. Ethan gave a small nod, just once. It was simple, but it felt like he had said 1,000 words. Clara smiled gently. Then she turned and walked toward the house. The Hayes house looked just like before. The wooden porch, the wide windows, and the soft creaking door. It all felt warm and welcoming. Inside, everything was clean and quiet. Clara placed her bag down and walked slowly through each room. Her fingers touched the furniture, the walls, the small things that held memories of her family. She stopped in front of a window that faced the barn. From there, she could see Ethan again. He was fixing a part of the fence, working with calm focus. Clara watched him for a moment. She remembered how he used to help her when she tried to learn ranch work. He never laughed when she made mistakes. He just showed her again, slowly and patiently. He had always been kind, not loud or expressive, but quietly kind. Clara sighed softly. "Some things never change," she whispered. Later that evening, the sun began to set. The sky turned orange and pink, and the valley looked peaceful. Clara stepped outside and walked toward the barn. Her boots made soft sounds on the dry ground. Ethan heard her coming, but he didn't turn right away. He finished what he was doing, then slowly looked up. They were closer now, closer than they had been all day. "Hi," Clara said gently. Ethan looked at her for a second before replying, "Hi." His voice was calm and low, just like she remembered. There was a small silence, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt familiar. "You stayed," Clara said. Ethan nodded. "Yeah." "You never left Willow Creek?" He shook his head slightly. "No." Clara looked around. It still looks the same. Ethan glanced at the valley. It does. Another pause. Clara smiled a little. You still don't talk much. Ethan's lips moved into a faint smile. Not really. For a moment, Clara felt like time had not passed at all, like they were still those two kids sitting near the creek. But deep inside, she knew things were different now. She just didn't know how much. The sun slowly disappeared behind the hills. The sky grew darker. Clara looked at Ethan one more time. I'm glad I came back, she said softly. Ethan looked at her, his eyes steady. Me too, he replied. And in that simple moment, something quiet began again. Part 2. The silence between them. The next morning in Willow Creek was soft and bright. The sun rose slowly, spreading warm light across the valley. Birds sang from the trees, and the sound of horses moving in the distance filled the air. Clara woke up early. For a moment she forgot where she was. But then she looked out the window and saw the wide fields again. A small smile came to her face. She was really back. She got ready and stepped outside. The cool morning air touched her face, and it felt peaceful. But deep inside, she felt something else too. A quiet, nervous feeling she could not explain. Her eyes moved toward the barn. Ethan was already there. He was working, just like always. Clara watched him for a few seconds before walking closer. Good morning, she said. Ethan looked up. Morning. His voice was simple, but there was something warm in it. Clara looked at the fence he was fixing. You always start early. Ethan gave a small nod. It's easier before the heat. Clara smiled. I remember. There was a short silence again. But this time, it felt a little different. It felt like both of them wanted to say more, but didn't know how. Over the next few days, Clara tried to help around the ranch. At first, it wasn't easy. She had forgotten many things. Her hands were not used to the work anymore, and sometimes she made small mistakes. One afternoon, she struggled to carry a heavy bucket of water. Before she could say anything, Ethan was beside her. Here, he said, taking the bucket from her hands. I can do it, Clara said quickly. Ethan looked at her calmly. I know, but you don't have to do everything alone. Clara paused. His words were simple, but they stayed in her mind. Thanks, she said softly. Ethan nodded and placed the bucket down near the horses. He didn't say anything else, but he stayed close, helping her without making it obvious. Clara noticed that. He was always like that. Quiet help, quiet care. One evening, Clara sat on the porch, watching the sky turn golden again. She held a cup of tea in her hands, thinking about the past, about the days when everything felt easy, about the boy who always sat beside her, even when he didn't speak. Suddenly, she noticed something on the small table next to her. A few fresh wildflowers. She picked them up slowly. They were simple, but beautiful. Clara looked around, but no one was there. Still, she knew. Ethan. A soft smile came to her face. The next day, Clara decided to walk to the creek. It had always been her favorite place. The water still moved gently, making soft sounds as it flowed over the stones. Clara sat down near the edge, letting her fingers touch the cool water. Still your favorite place? She turned. Ethan stood a few steps behind her. She smiled. Yes, some things don't change. Ethan walked closer and stood beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the water filled the silence. Clara looked at him. Do you ever think about the past? Ethan didn't answer right away. Sometimes, he said. Clara nodded. Me too. She looked at the water again. I used to talk so much back then, she said with a small laugh. You probably got tired of hearing me. Ethan shook his head slightly. No. Clara looked at him, surprised. I liked it, he added quietly. Her smile faded into something softer. You never said much, she said. Ethan looked at the flowing water. I didn't need to. Clara felt something shift inside her. There was meaning in his words, more than he was saying. Later that evening, the town felt more alive than usual. People were preparing for the Valley Fair. Lights were being hung, music could be heard from far away, and everyone seemed excited. Clara walked through the small streets, watching everything with interest. She had missed this feeling, this simple happiness. As she passed by a group of people, she noticed Ethan again. He was talking to a few ranchers. Clara stopped for a moment. It was rare to see him talk this much. She watched him from a distance. He looked comfortable, but still quiet in his own way. Then, suddenly, Ethan looked up. Their eyes met. Clara felt her heart skip slightly. Ethan said something to the others and then slowly walked toward her. "Hey," he said. "Hey," Clara replied. There was a pause, but this time it felt different. Not empty, not awkward, just full. "Are you going to the fair tomorrow?" Clara asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah." "Good," she said with a small smile. "I'll be there too." Ethan looked at her for a moment longer than usual. "Okay," he said. Clara turned to leave, but then stopped. "Ethan?" He looked at her. "I'm really glad you're still here." Ethan didn't answer right away, but his eyes softened. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too." Clara walked away, her heart feeling lighter. Behind her, Ethan stood still, watching her go. For years he had kept everything inside, but now something was changing, slowly, and neither of them could ignore it anymore. Part 3. The words he held on to. The day of the Valley Fair arrived with excitement in the air. Colorful lights were hung across the streets, and soft music played from every corner. People laughed, children ran around happily, and the smell of fresh food filled the evening. Clara walked slowly through the crowd. She wore a simple dress, and her hair moved gently with the wind. There was a soft glow on her face, and for the first time in many years, she truly felt at peace. But her eyes were searching. She was looking for someone, Ethan. She didn't know why, but she wanted to see him. She wanted to talk to him again, to understand the quiet feelings that had started to grow inside her. As she moved through the fair, she finally saw him. He was standing near a group of ranchers, listening more than speaking, just like always. The warm lights around him made his face look softer. Clara stopped for a moment. She watched him quietly. Something about him felt different tonight. Maybe it was the way he stood. Maybe it was the way he looked around, as if he was also searching for someone. Then suddenly, Ethan turned. Their eyes met. For a second, everything else faded away. The noise, the music, the people, nothing else mattered. Ethan said something to the others and then walked toward her. Each step felt slow but steady. Clara felt her heart beating faster. When he reached her, they stood close, facing each other. "Hi," Clara said softly. "Hi," Ethan replied. There was a small silence, but this silence was not the same as before. It felt full of something waiting to be said. "You came," Clara said with a light smile. Ethan nodded. "I said I would." Clara looked around. "It's nice tonight." "Yeah," he said. "It is." Another pause. Clara took a small breath. "Do you come here every year?" Ethan shook his head. "Not always." Clara looked at him, curious. "Then why this time?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at her instead. "Because you're here," he said. Clara felt her breath stop for a moment. His words were simple, but they meant so much. She looked down for a second, trying to understand what she was feeling. Then she looked back at him. "You've changed," she said softly. Ethan gave a small smile. "A little." "No," Clara said gently. "Not really. You're still the same." Ethan didn't argue. because maybe she was right. They started walking together through the fair, side by side, just like they used to. They passed small shops, watched people play games, and listened to music. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. But now, the silence between them felt different. It felt comfortable, like something natural. At one point, they stopped near a small stand selling warm drinks. Ethan bought 2 cups and handed one to Clara. "Thanks," she said. He nodded. Clara held the cup in her hands, feeling its warmth. "Do you remember," she said slowly, "when we used to come here as kids?" Ethan looked at her. "Yeah." "You never wanted to play the games," she said with a small laugh. Ethan's lips curved slightly. "I didn't like losing." Clara smiled. "You never lost. You just didn't try." Ethan looked ahead. "Maybe." Clara studied his face. There was something deeper in his eyes tonight, something he had been holding inside for a long time. "Ethan," she said quietly. He looked at her. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Why didn't you ever say anything before I left?" Ethan went still. The question stayed in the air between them. For a moment, he didn't speak. Clara thought maybe he wouldn't answer, but then, slowly, he did. "I didn't think it mattered," he said. Clara frowned slightly. "Why would it not matter?" Ethan looked down at the ground. "You wanted to leave," he said. "You had dreams." Clara's voice softened. So I didn't want to stop you." Clara felt her chest tighten. "You wouldn't have stopped me," she said gently. Ethan didn't reply, because deep inside, he wasn't sure. They walked a little further until they reached a quieter part of the fair. The lights were softer here, the noise was lower. It felt calm. Clara stopped walking. Ethan stopped too. She turned to face him. "You thought I would forget?" she asked. Ethan looked at her. "I thought you might," he said honestly. Clara shook her head slowly. "I didn't," she said. Ethan's eyes changed slightly. For the first time, there was something clear in them, something real. "You didn't?" he asked. Clara smiled, but it was a soft, emotional smile. "No," she said. "Some things stay with you." Ethan took a small breath. It felt like years of silence were standing between them, waiting to be broken. "I used to think," he started, then stopped. Clara waited. Ethan looked at her again. "I used to think that if I stayed here long enough, maybe you'd come back." Clara's heart beat faster. "And now?" she asked. Ethan held her gaze. "Now you're here." The words were simple, but they carried something deeper. Clara felt it. She understood it. The quiet cowboy who had always stayed silent was finally beginning to speak, and this time she was ready to listen. Part 4. The cowboy finally spoke. The night had grown quiet around them. The fair was still alive in the distance, but where Clara and Ethan stood, everything felt calm and still. Soft lights flickered far away, and the cool evening air moved gently through the valley. Clara and Ethan stood facing each other. For a moment, neither of them spoke. But this silence was different. It was not empty. It was full of everything they had been holding inside for years. Clara looked at Ethan carefully. She could see something in his eyes, something strong, something honest, something he was finally ready to say. Ethan took a slow breath. He removed his hat and held it in his hands, looking down for a second. This was new. Clara had never seen him like this before. Nervous, unsure, but also ready. When he looked up again, his eyes met hers. "I've loved you since childhood," he said. The words were simple, but they felt powerful. They carried years of quiet feelings, years of waiting, years of unspoken truth. Clara felt her heart stop for a moment. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just looked at him. The quiet cowboy who had never said much had finally said everything. The wind passed softly between them. Clara's eyes filled with emotion. Not sadness, but something deeper, something warm. "All this time," she said slowly, "you felt that way?" Ethan nodded once. "Yeah." "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked gently. Ethan gave a small, thoughtful look. "You had a different life waiting for you," he said. "You wanted to see the world." Clara shook her head slightly. "And you thought telling me would stop me?" Ethan looked down for a moment. "I didn't want to take that chance," he said honestly. Clara stepped a little closer. "You didn't take anything from me," she said softly. "You just stayed quiet." Ethan looked at her again. "I didn't think I had the right," he said. Clara's expression softened. "You always did," she replied. There was a pause, but now it didn't feel heavy. It felt clear. Clara looked around the valley, the same place she had once wanted to leave so badly, the same place she had now come back to. "I thought I needed to go far away to find something," she said slowly. Ethan listened. "But I think," she continued, "I was just trying to understand myself." Ethan nodded slightly. "And now?" he asked. Clara looked back at him. "Now I understand what matters." Her words were quiet, but they were full of truth. Ethan didn't rush to reply. He just stood there, letting the moments settle. The lights from the fair shimmered in the distance. Soft music reached them, carried by the wind. Clara smiled gently. "You know," she said, "you're still the same." Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly. "How?" "You don't say much," she said, "but when you do, it matters." Ethan gave a small smile. "I guess I was waiting for the right time." Clara tilted her head slightly. "And this is the right time?" Ethan looked at her steadily. "Yeah," he said. Clara felt her heart calm down. Everything felt simple now, clear, real. They began walking slowly back toward the fair, not in a hurry, just walking side by side, the same way they used to. But now, something had changed. There was no confusion, no distance, just understanding. As they walked, Clara spoke again. "I used to think you didn't feel anything," she said. Ethan glanced at her. "I did." "I know that now," she said with a small smile. Ethan looked ahead. "I just didn't know how to say it." Clara nodded. "You said it now." Ethan gave a quiet, "Yeah." When they reached the edge of the fair, the lights grew brighter. People were still laughing, talking, enjoying the night. But for Clara, everything felt different now. She wasn't just someone visiting anymore. She belonged here again. And this time, she wasn't alone. She looked at Ethan. "I'm glad I came back," she said. Ethan met her eyes. "Me too." There was a quiet pause. Then Clara asked softly, "What happens now?" Ethan thought for a moment. Then he gave a simple answer. "We don't rush." Clara smiled. "I like that." Ethan nodded. "We just see where this goes." Clara looked at him, her expression calm and happy. "Okay," she said. The night continued around them. The valley remained peaceful. And under the soft glow of lights and stars, two people who had once been separated by silence were finally walking the same path. Not as strangers, not as just childhood friends, but as two hearts that had found their way back to each other. And this time, no words were left unspoken.